And this is the kind of attitude that these leaders, especially Boukman, Biassou, Jean-François, Dessalines, and Défilé, that's the kind of mind they had. Now, why we might just as well, I don't like to go into the horrors of slavery too much. But when you see and you wonder, why did Dessalines and why did they take up this ferocious and fierce attitude? You only have to see how they were treated. Slavery was slavery anywhere it was, but it was tremendously horrendous on that island, as some of the reports show. Very, very horrendous. A thing that was even worse than they say it was even worse than in some of the British islands. And it took a man, again, like Dessalines, to be able to see that. Because he was the man that became the most brilliant general of them all. He was the man whom, even though people like General Rochambeau hated his guts and wanted to kill him bit by bit, take his ear off, take one eye off, take one nostril off, take teeth off. And that's how he was going to do to Dessalines when he caught him. But the shoe was on the other foot, and he had to run away from the island when Dessalines won, because we knew Dessalines was looking for him and what would happen to him. He jumped on a ship and escaped to France before Dessalines' men could catch him. But he himself had to say, he himself had to admit, while the struggle was going on, that Dessalines is the only man who knows how to successfully wage war in the colony. We are only 5th graders compared with him. This is an illiterate. This is a savage. This is a man who had no redeeming feature as far as they were concerned. And the top French general is admitting, after he got his behind whipped, that this man was a brilliant, brilliant general, and we were only small fry with him. And what happened? Who was this man who was to play such a victorious part in the African Revolution in Saint-Dominique, as I call it? Who was Jean-Jacques Dessalines? And if we take a deep look at him, you'll get a good glance at him, especially when they were executing a mulatto called Vincent Auger. They were executing Auger and another man called Chavan for having had a small insurrection before the Haitian Revolution started. They wanted to get their voting rights and so on, and they got some Africans to help them, some enslaved Africans. And they were witnessing when they had caught Auger and the others, they were witnessing not only Auger and Chavan and many of their Africans, brothers and sisters. They were at the Place d'Armes watching the executioner deal with Auger. And this is the kind of brutality that they were fighting, Dessalines and others. When the executioner slashed, cut, and tortured Vincent Auger to death from the scaffold in the Place d'Armes, Défilé, who was standing near a cluster of pear trees, let out a scream that rang through the air and startled the Africans. They had been forced by their tormentors to stand by and witness the grisly and macabre execution by torture of Vincent Auger, the mulatto who had instigated the uprising against the whites. With him too was his fellow conspirator Chavan, who was also hacked to death in the sight of these African men and women, and also some African slaves who had been slashed to death. They got the others to stand and to sit in the Place d'Armes watching this executioner, watching them do that to these people. And at the time, that's before the revolution, Dessalines was there, Christophe was there, Défilé was there, Toussaint was there. Henri Christophe stood there seething with anger, watching this, his eyes ablaze and seeking to catch the attention of the other leaders, because they had planned what they were going to do. They were only biding their time. He noticed Bookman, big-chested, powerful, from the Turpin plantation. Jean-François was near him. They stood motionless, but fired with rage, trying to contain themselves, awaiting their time from the moment they had chosen for the massive onslaught they were going to make on the plantations. Christophe followed their gaze to where Toussaint sat, immobile, impassive, his face without emotion, yet his dark eyes burned with banked fires of volcanic rage, even though he seemed immobile, not moving and impassive. That's Toussaint. All eyes turned to Défilé. Everyone at Cap François knew her. She had become a voodoo priestess, tall, slender, with sharp features and the color, the brown color of the Creole, with the beauty of her mother, who had come from the wider people in Africa. Défilé hated her white father for what he had done to her mother. The young girl's African beauty caught the eyes of a white plantation owner who kept her almost imprisoned as his mistress. She escaped, having killed him. And when she was discovered by other planters, they tried to slash her vagina. She survived. She managed to escape, and then she got away, and then she joined with Dessalines and the others. No one other than Jean-Jacques Dessalines was ever seen with her. Across the Place d'Armes, Dessalines rushed to her side. He put his arms around Défilé to comfort her. Anger bristled in his powerful, muscular body. Christophe recalled the first time he had seen Dessalines, manacled, chained to a coffle, his dark body naked, head swollen from incessant beatings and streaked with blood, a froth of blood on his full lips, and his eyes in the full blaze with frenzied anger. At the Place d'Armes, that day of the execution, it was strange to see Dessalines comforting anyone. The molten sun shone directly overhead. The executioner stabbed at some of the men on the torture wheel. Getting no response, he swung his heavy slab and hacked off their heads with total indifference. Défilé cried out again, and Dessalines put his firm, strong hands over her mouth and stifled her screams. The executioner jammed with severed heads on his pike staff, held them up in the air, and descended from the scaffold. Revenge was etched on the feature of every African in that square in Cap François. It was not only Auger and Chavannes, but all the Africans that were involved in that uprising had been hacked to death. Dessalines had endured countless beatings. When they tried to convert him to the Christian faith by dragging him and several other Africans into a Jesuit church, he refused to budge, although in chains. He covered his groin with his hands where the whipstock hit him a stunning blow. He heaved the contents of his retching stomach and doubled over in pain. The brutish driver clubbed him unmercifully again and again and again. Dessalines fell on his knees, his lips a spongy pulp of red, one eye swollen shut, and the other blinded by a rivulet of blood. For he refused to do the bidding of the man who had bought him. That was why on the night of that 1791 rebellion, as it was about to begin, Dessalines sprang into the clearing at the Bois Cayman, where Bookman was leading the ceremonies, and he roared for all to hear, "I, Dessalines, will disembowel every planter in Saint-Dominique and drip their entrails on the tichat trees. I will gouge out their eyes and feed them to the fishes." Bookman rushed to Dessalines' side, and he said to the crowd, "We cannot return to our native Guinea. The cursed whites have brought so many of us here that we are like seeds of the muka plants. 1,000 ships could not take us all back to Senegal, to Ghana, to Zambezi, to Somali, to Katanga, to the 100 rivers and forests of our native land. And so we make this our Guinea. This land smells like Guinea. looks like Guinea. We shall burn the cane fields, smash the maceratos, destroy the boiling sheds,